Hello and welcome to the 2021-2022 Program Monitoring Random Validation Phase 1 Process Training for Title I Part C Migrant Education Program. In this session, we will provide you with an overview of the Title I Part C MEP for Priority for Service requirement. First, we would like to share some things to keep in mind regarding this random validation process. Please note that documenting overall compliance for a program requirement may require several forms of documentation to be maintained locally and be available upon request by TEA and/or an auditor. Another thing to note is that to ensure overall compliance with the program requirements, LEAs should refer to the program guide and/or other program-related resources that reference the multiple forms of documentation required to be maintained locally. In addition, keep in mind that the documentation requested for submission during the random validation process may not include all the forms of documentation that are required to be maintained locally. If meeting documentation is to be provided for any requirement, please consider the following. The standard meeting documentation that an LEA should maintain locally includes meeting agendas, meeting notes or minutes, and sign-in sheets. Please note that due to COVID-19, documentation for virtual meetings is an acceptable form of documentation. Given the increased use of virtual meeting environments, participant rosters that include the meeting title, meeting date, and stakeholder names and roles would be acceptable substitutes for the more traditional sign-in sheets. This eliminates the need of a participant signature. Now let's talk specifically about the requirement for documentation for priority for service. According to ESEA, as submitted by ESSA, sections 1301(2) and 1304(d), the ELEA is to give service priority to migrant children who made a qualifying move within the previous one-year period and who were failing or at most risk of failing the challenging state academic standards. The required documentation for this program requirement includes a copy of the District Priority for Service Student Action Plan. The acceptable documentation is a completed PFS action plan. Again, the documentation required is a copy of the completed Priority for Service or PFS action plan. What are some issues that may result in an improvement needed status for this requirement? Auditable documentation requested when not submitted. Documentation submitted does not reference the PFS criteria. Documentation submitted does not include detailed activities. Or documentation submitted was not for activities to take place in 2021-2022. This concludes the section on the requirements for the Title I Part C Migrant Education Program as it relates to priority for service. We hope that you will find it helpful. Here is our contact information. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Thank you.